In 1987, I wrote this story called Contamination, and it was actually based on a scene from The Thing, a 1982 film with Kurt Russell, directed by John Carpenter. But there I was, me and Pete, in beginning video production at the U of A, and this was to be our very first production in college, our very first college film. So I have no idea where I came up with the storyline. I guess you know what it was? We had our cars worked on by this mechanic, which is this, where we shot the film was this mechanic's yard, kind of a junkyard. It was pretty gross, but I always thought, what a great place to shoot. So I think when I was there and saw it, I started thinking of a story, and then
Contamination was our first project, I believe, at the U of A. Dr. Wilson was the professor, I guess. We used to have our cars fixed by this crazy old coot in the sticks, and we thought it would be a good site, good location for a weird little film.
And here's where Serge and Bob came down this fateful street. I think this is it. And here's those posts. You might remember these posts. That slab over there that you see is where the whole Barnyard Mechanics was. And it's all gone, taken down now. This is where Bob was throwing out back here. And Serge was like, just hang on, man. Over here's those posts. Oh, they walked. Oh, here comes the car. Look at that. So I don't get thrown out. I'm trespassing on someone's private property here. Let's get out of here before we get arrested, okay? We'll get up on top of that hill for that big introductory shot. That's it.
I have no recollection of how I became involved in Contamination other than just hanging out in the circle of friends that we had. So other than that, I don't know. Now I know, because apparently I'm the understudy of somebody else that you chose previously, but I don't have any recollection how exactly that all formulated.
My son Clarke made a lot of the movies when he was young, continued on into adulthood, but I remember specifically the ones that I helped him with, and one of them was Contamination, and had a very small part in that, but it was great fun anyway. I played the part of one of the contaminants next to George Mazarakis, who we were all friends at the time, and we were the ones that came up at the end and said, what did we say?
Have some water.
Oh, have some water, and that's when it faded out, and that was the end of it.
Well, as I see it, Contamination is kind of a broad picture that takes in a lot of things, especially, we don't know what's lurking in our water, in our air. I think in a way it has environmental overtones. And I think that the possibilities, well, look at what's happening in New Orleans today. There you have people that are suffering from contamination and they don't even know it. So I think the Contamination picture was far ahead of its time.
We're always into these weird horror flicks. I don't know. I guess they're the easiest things to write, I don't know, with our brains. But we started it out with the main character was going to be Lamar, whom was my roommate at the time and part of the whole clique. Worked at McDonald's, etc. He, playing basketball with me, he blew his knee out, and he just had a hard time doing that, getting around and doing it. He didn't have a lot of patience, so we scrapped him. He went to the cutting room floor, and we replaced him with Serge and Bob. Although I think Bob was originally going to be in it because Lamar and Bob were good buddies, so we figured that they would be a good character mesh. And we decided to, when when Lamar didn't work out, I guess Clarke got a hold of Serge, and he wanted to do it, so he did it. And that's how that whole project got started.
I had worked with Pete a couple times as an actor, and he wanted to, kind of produce this and help me make it. So
Actually, Clarke, I think, was in. He was a zombie freak at the end. I don't think I was ever actually in this one. I just was behind the scenes, shooting and putting the whole project together.
I ain't taking any chances until I know what the hell's going on around here.
Yeah, the guy is guy's a lost soul, and it's too bad he got mugged at the end, because I think a sequel with him would have probably worked out a lot better. Other than just being somebody who's like got the wanderlust,
Well, I think Contamination was an interesting concept. Peter said that he needed some help on this, and I thought, well, I can do that. And I remember screaming a lot.
Water. Get away from me, man!
What's Contamination about? I'm really not sure, other than it just happens to take place in water-deprived Arizona, and it's contaminated water. So really, it's kind of a factual thing for the most part, because obviously there was a contaminated issue with the groundwater in Tucson, Arizona, just a few years prior to that. So somehow that transcended into the general population, created a whole society of zombies, and therefore I perish. So.
My favorite moment was the whole Andy spitting up the egg whites or whatever he did. That was so funny, and he was such a character. He really got into his roles.
I think my favorite moment is when Andy vomits the egg whites all over. I mean the stuff all over the place.
I guess my favorite moment is when Andy stands up and grabs Serge, and he does the puking thing. I think that scene, gross as it is very compelling, very intense. And I remember when we screened the film in class, people just went nuts. It was a big class, and they just started screaming, and they just couldn't believe what they were seeing. So it was very kind of ahead of its time, I think, in a sense, because students back then weren't doing stuff like this. They were doing documentaries, they were doing news features, talking heads, stuff you see in the news, regular local news. And here I come with this sickening science fiction movie with this guy throwing up, and they probably thought there's going to be a lot more throwing up to come. I think people were just really glued to it, and they freaked out. And
this was a much more upscale. We were using, a lot of good equipment at U of A, although I don't think the equipment was that much better than anything we had been using. And the whole class had to watch it, and it's a much bigger class.
I was alone because Pete didn't even come to the screening. I don't know why that day he didn't come, but I was alone. I had to stand up afterwards and say hello and answer some questions, but then I was nervous as hell. But I also felt a little funny with this bizarre horror film, in the middle of all these straightforward news type people. The toughest part was working with the extras, George and my mom and stuff, and Mike. Never have ever worked with a crowd of people before, and that was scary. But I remember thinking, this is awesome. We have all these people helping us with the film, and they're extras, and it looks like a big production because we have so many people, and that was cool. We shot the whole film in one day, pretty intense because it's a lot going on for one day. We completely shot it out of order, and we went into the night, and the whole scene with Andy there is all at night. And we probably shot till 8 o'clock at night. It was quite dark and late, and we were all very hungry.
I think everybody was wonderful. I have to admit it's been a while since we did Contamination, but it was a fabulous opportunity. I always felt that it might be my ticket to stardom in Hollywood, but unfortunately it never worked out.
Oh yeah, you guys were great. You guys bought me food, and I was starving at the time, so yeah, I definitely got along with you. Come on, plus I know you guys from high school, so yeah, everybody, we were all buddies.
Yeah, I thought Serge was great. I remember thinking he was so awesome, and he was really had a outgoing attitude, and he was a real ham, and working with him was great. Bob was fun too. I mean, I've absolutely lost contact with Bob. I've been trying to reach him do an interview on the DVD like I'm doing with everyone else, but Working with these guys was a lot of fun. It was just a great day.
Yeah, Andy. Wow, what a great guy. Great personality. Obviously his persona didn't quite fit his physical stature. As I remember, he was a pretty gregarious guy. Gray hair though. Gray hair.
He was great to have around, and he always put everyone at ease. Also had a really great attitude, and he took the project seriously and always wanted to do his best. And he was always, even though he was such a ham, he was always very nervous and unsure of himself and didn't have a lot of self-esteem about his acting abilities. And everything he was in, I thought he was great in. So having him on this and many other projects has always been the greatest to have, because he just helped so much, and he was such a great attitude, and he took it serious, and he didn't think of this as just some stupid thing his kid is doing. He took it serious, and he was awesome.
Contamination was a good one. We really enjoyed doing it. It was our first real project, and it turned out really good. And everyone loves it, and probably that's why Clarke did Contamination too. It's just it was a silly idea, but
it was such fun because Clarke was so talented. He wrote, directed, produced all of these things from childhood on up, and that was one of my favorite.
I think it was absolutely excellent, and I think it was way ahead of its time. And if you think about it, people are now realizing that contamination is an important subject.
Contamination to this day, and it's going to be 20 years old soon, is one of my favorite films I've ever done. One of the most stressful and rushed ones, but I think it has a flow to it. It doesn't have any continuity errors to speak of, and it's easy to follow.
the character of George and Andy and Jim, the mechanic, it'll make you feel real good. It was too funny.